All right, with that all being said, our next talk is by Justin Sherrill. Yeah! Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the very Kermit-style introduction. There have been so many polished and beautiful presentations here. No more of that. So, yes, I'm Justin Sherrill. My talk today is what I'm calling a cartographic tour of R and ggplot. Thank you, David, for stealing some of my material as well. So, but I'll just get into it. Who am I? I am an analyst with Echo Northwest, a consultancy and based out of Portland, Oregon. We have offices here as well in Seattle and elsewhere in the West. I work mainly in the realm of data visualization, housing and demographic analysis. Anytime there's a map to be made at the firm, I'm usually somewhere close to it, but not always. And then I'm happy to say that some of my earliest R work was featured in a book that was published a couple of years ago called Upper Left Cities, a Cultural Atlas of San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle by David Banis and Hunter Shobi. This featured some of my first work, and you're actually not allowed to judge it too harshly because I did these when I was like on year 2 of knowing R, so you should only feel good things about that. But this is just showing a kind of like abstraction of commute data from loads, the US Census data set. So cartography in R, and basically my pitch to you is to keep it in ggplot2. There's lots of really great packages. I know there's that basically are wrappers and simplify the whole process. Tmap is great. I love Tmap, and there's a lot of packages and effort put into kind of holding your hand and giving you a very default looking but easy to work with map. And I think those are great, but I don't personally use them. Oh, gosh. I don't personally use them because I like to keep it in ggplot2 because I think it reinforces the learning the ins and outs of one of the strongest data visualization packages that we have currently at our disposal. I think keeping it in ggplot2 and the associated kind of like universe packages gives you a flexibility to try new things and fit really weird project requirements and your personal style as well. And there's maybe a good chance of redundancy if one of those packages fails. There's lots of overlapping packages that accomplish the same thing or similar things that you might not end up kind of like in a dead end if something should happen to one of your favorite default mapping packages. And of course, it gives you an opportunity to meet exciting new developers, learn new ways of analysis and visualization. And so, yeah, those are great reasons, I think, why you should keep all of your cartography and map making that you do in R in the ggplot universe. And so, you know, my basic picture of what we're going to be talking about is sometimes there's a custom package out there that really helps you accomplish what you need to do for a specific map. Other times, the solution was always right in front of you. It was just learning how to use SF or some of the default functions and functionality of ggplot2 in unique and maybe interesting ways. So what is good cartography? You know, you look it up, you hear lots of things about visual hierarchy, legibility, figure ground, how well does the data set that you are trying to highlight pop against the background, which is usually going to be your spatial contextual data, like where is this thing happening? But your figure ground, the figure in front of the ground is what is happening there, like what specific event is taking place. And then you have to keep in mind balance, the balance of visual components, of contextual components with the actual highlighted, with the map elements, everything else. All of that comes down to making choices. One of my favorite movies, Wonder Boys, has this great line, you know, writing a good story is about making decisions. And really what that means is making sacrifices. And choosing things and letting other things go off the map and just kind of going with maybe a more simplified, directed approach. I think there's a lot of data flow and information that our eyes are constantly intaking, and I think keeping it simple and focused is maybe a good way to cut through a lot of chaff that we just kind of scroll through in our day-to-day. So how to make a good map? In my opinion, you copy a good map. My personal favorites are a cartographer named Jacques Bertin from France in the 1960s, a radical leftist cartographer named William Bunge, and just to put somebody who's like an R practitioner in there, a person named Timo Grossenbacher. Jacques Bertin was really like kind of a seminal figure in data visualization. Maybe some of you have heard of him. Tufte lives a lot of his kind of principles and work from Jacques Bertin. He wrote a book called Semiology of Graphics that I think Esri republished in the last few years. It's fantastic. I look constantly at this book for inspiration. William Bungie is a little bit harder to find. He's kind of been forgotten, but I think his data visualization that he was doing in the 60s and 70s is really evocative and interesting. And he has this sort of, like, as you can see, pretty pared down look to his maps as well. And then Timo Grossenbacher, I shamelessly copied a lot of elements from Timo's map of Switzerland's regional demographics. He wrote this in a blog post like in 2016. And this was kind of like one of the first maps I saw made in R, and it just blew my mind. Wow, you can make something that crisp and kind of clean looking in R. That's so great. And that is what prompted me to dive into to R, really. So let's get into it. This is the portion of the presentation where I just start vomiting code at you. So strap in. Spatial is a fantastic mapping package that does so many things. One of the things it does, it's not something I really care about or put in every one of my maps, but maybe it's important for you, is marginalia, your scale bar and your north arrow. These are exceptionally easy functions that Spatial does right here, where you can just say location, bottom right, which north, true, style, minimal, my style. And this is just a simple map. But you know, the balance, the north arrow is kind of crowded in. Maybe you want a little bit more space between it. So here's a tip, a little clippy tip, as you can see up there. Set your bounds of your map in chord SF to something that's like the main shape of your map, but buffered. So I just took Seattle from the Tigris package, a spatial layer of Seattle, and I buffered it by 5,000 meters, took the ST B box and took the first and third elements of those for my X limits. It's always, the B box always comes in X min, Y min, X max, Y max. So I'm taking first and third, second and fourth. And then boom, I've zoomed my map out a little bit. And so now my marginalia maybe has a little bit more breathing room or anything else you might want to put in there. But maybe you want to just use better context with a base map, a tiled base map from a server like Mapbox. Kyle Walker, the GOAT, Tidy Census package creator. He also has his Mapbox APIs package, and it plays really well with Spatial in a function called layer spatial. And so I'm using get static tiles from Mapbox API. I have a Mapbox account. I designed my map, my base map in there, and I'm pulling it in. I'm not giving you the actual API key or my username, but that's what it looks like. Now, a traditional base map, kind of like the default ones, it puts your geographic features, your roads, your bodies of water, your parks, and your labels all in one tile. But that might not be a great decision if you have thematic data that you want to show. So now my contextual labels, my street names, my interstate shields, they're behind my data because I put layer spatial in first and then my tracked population on top of it. Well, there's nothing stopping you from making two base maps in Mapbox API, and I'll just have it open right here. This is it. You know, you can go into your Mapbox Studio and just turn off labels, and that is your base map now, as you can see. And then you can turn everything else off except for labels, and then is your label layer, and then just sandwich your data between two calls to layer spatial, and then you get a map with your base map behind, your thematic data next on top of it, and then finally your actual street labels and interstate shields on top of that, so that the reader has kind of a little bit more spatial contextual awareness of what's going on. Placing your legend inside the map can also be kind of a good idea if you want to save some space. So just move that position through legend position inside the map, choose the justification that's right for the location, the corner that you've put it in. The legend box background, you can actually trick that into being transparent. It doesn't have an alpha argument, but trailing right there, 60% opacity basically is what I'm telling that hex value of white to be. And then I have a slightly transparent legend inside my map. Insets. Where am I in this map? A reader might be saying, you're in Green Lake. Where is Green Lake if they've never heard of it? You make a little inset map. And using a package called Patchwork from Thomas Lynn Peterson, one of the authors of ggplot, I basically make two maps. I've got my Green Lake map, my zoom in, and then I've got my inset map. Those are two separate ggplot elements. And I use the patchwork function inset element to position it down in the bottom right corner, right here, as you can see. And then, oof, you can use GG Magnify to use insets as well. It's not my favorite. There's not as much customizability, but you know, it's there for you to use it as well. Labels, as David said, GG Repel is, I use it all the time in my maps. It works in spatial data just as well as any other context. And you should really not sleep on it, especially because it has the background color argument actually inside of it as well, as we'll see in this next map, where maybe I want to label some cities and I want to label the counties. And so with that BG color outline of white, my county labels have a little bit of a breathing room in front of the county boundaries. But what is going on here is that you have unusual polygons. And so my trick for labeling those is to use SF function, st inscribed circle, to find the best fit. As you can see, st inscribed circle finds the largest circle within your polygon. And you can use that centroid of that to label an unusually shaped polygon. GG Force has a great package, or it's a great package also from Thomas Lynn Peterson. It has a family of functions called geom_mark ellipses, which are these very sexy big box labels where you can label a subset of points. So here I've downloaded some wildfire data from Washington DNR, and I've found a subset that I think is interesting, and I've created a geom_mark ellipses of that subset and with my custom label package. And then GGFX also has the drop shadow. If I want to make that label pop a little bit more off the map, use that geom_mark ellipses with shadow from the GGFX. They all play together very nicely. GD density package has a geom HDR, which I think is a great way of visualizing patterns. If I don't want to get into showing the actual fire points, I can show the concentrations of them. And so this is using that geom HDR function, which is almost like a GG density, but it has a little bit easier parameters to work with, especially if you're going to use a legend. I didn't here. And so I gave that also a blur with GGFX to kind of give it a little more gestural color. But then again, maybe you want to use grids to talk about patterns and concentrations. I use these all the time. This is an SF function called st_make_grid. I give it my counties. I give it the cell size that I want, and it makes a rectangular tessellated sampling grid. And I just drop my points and start sampling based on that grid location and the acres burned within each grid cell. I take the one that is the most common and call that the cause of that grid cell. But this kind of doesn't play well with the background behind it. So I can also join my counties to that same grid and make a sort of like a cartogram, interesting little abstract map of Washington counties that fits well with that, that abstraction way of showing things in the grid. And another one, if we're simplifying things, R Map Shaper is the best package, in my opinion, for simplifying your geographies. It has a great simplification function that makes sure that you don't drop shapes accidentally by simplifying them too much. Smoother can give you rounded corners to your simplified shapes. And then did you also know that you can negatively buffer shapes as well? So here is something that I've simplified, smooth, and I gave it a negative buffer so that each of these counties now kind of pops on its own. This isn't true to life, of course. This is more of a kind of stylistic, gestural map. Maybe that's useful for you in this particular context. And I will go through the last few packages here really quickly. GG Arrow just came out like last week. It is a great, I think it has a lot of potential for drawing arrows outside of the default ggplot style. There's lots of customizability. You can customize everything about the head and the tail and the width. It's fantastic. I'm excited to dive into it a little bit more. GG Star is a very little known package that I stumbled across accidentally. It expands the number of PCH symbols by like another 50 or so, and it gives you lots of opportunities to visualize things, maybe truer to life, like fireworks looking like a little 7-pointed star, so on and so forth. And that gives you just another dimension to visualize with. And last one, GGSVG by Cool But Useless, gives you the ability to download. I found a little Clippy SVG, and I placed them in my map by reading in the lines. And then GGSVG has this package called geompoint SVG, and I've given it the path to that SVG text. Hey, Clippy, what are you doing in Yakima? That's not the way you usually talk. It's weird, but yeah, I don't know, Clippy, you've changed a lot. So thank you. I didn't know how to end my presentation, obviously. So I want to just give a shout out thanks to all the package creators who do this amazing work for free that gives us so many tools and ways to show our work. And of course, thank you to the organizers.